Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passion World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. And as always, I have a phenomenal guest with me today, and my guest is extra exceptional because he is in New Jersey. And I always love to interview people from New Jersey. That's my home state. That's where I live. And I think people should know about resources that are in New Jersey for my audience who does live in New Jersey. And even those who don't live in New Jersey, you could gain much information because my guest today is Thomas Gagliano, and he is a best-selling author. He has 2 books out, and I just love the name of them. The first book, The Problem Was Me, How to End Negative Self-Talk. And I think that's a book that everyone could benefit from. And the newest book, I love this title, Don't Put Crap in Your Kid's Diaper. The cleanup cost can last a lifetime. Thomas Gagliano is also a keynote speaker, relationship expert. He has a master's degree in social work, a bachelor's degree in marketing. And I want to welcome Thomas Gagliano to Chatting with Betsy. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you are welcome. It is my pleasure. I have to tell you, I love the names of your book, your titles. I'll start the first book. How did you come up with that title? And I love it. And I love how it says how to end negative self-talk, because a lot of people, me including, need to read something like that.
Well, you know, my books are always predicated on childhood messages. And I believe that childhood messages impact every part of our life, the intimacy we have, the careers we choose, the roles we play, even our parenting skills. And I realized coming from a tough childhood, coming from an abusive childhood, I had a lot of negative self-talk. I talk about my book. I talk about this fictitious character called the warden that sat on my shoulder, always sabotaged my happiness, always told me I wasn't good enough. And I had to get to the point where I had to challenge that fictitious character called the warden, and I had to allow myself to have very positive messages in my life, because I believe that childhood messages unleash a tsunami of negative thoughts, ideas, core beliefs, voices that will carry throughout our life unless we stop and we challenge them. And I'm not knocking parents now. You know, there's some messages that parents give us that are very positive, very healthy, but there's also some messages that we have to kind of challenge sometimes and identify and see if they're really helping us. So I came up with The Problem Was Me, and in my book, I talk about my life story and how I felt many people stop sabotaging their happiness, take their life to a new level, and start to talk positive about themselves, celebrating their victories, not always running to dilemmas. So that's a little bit of what I try to talk about in my book, The Problem Was Me.
I love that, Thomas. I'm going to I always share with my audience, I'm a huge mental health advocate, and I've said on my show many times, I came from an emotionally abusive childhood, and I had to finally flip my script, and I didn't do that till the age of 60. I'm 67, and it's never too late to change your story that someone else told you that you were. My father, I know he loved me in his own way and the way that he could love me, but he used to tell me I was ugly all the time. And he told my sister she was fat. And matter of fact, my sister said to me, Betsy, I would feel bad for you because Daddy called you ugly. He just said that I was fat. So
right.
When a girl grows up and thinking that she's ugly, I think it just predisposes someone to abusive relationships or to be so happy that someone's talking to her that you settle for anything. And it took me a long time to get over that.
Yeah. And the message is, I'm not good enough. That's what all my clients come to me, is I'm not good enough. See, our parents were our gods when we were young. They fed us, they clothed us, they showed us how to view the world and how the world viewed us. They're very powerful. And I talk about this thing I learned in school called egocentricity. That means the world revolves around the child. There's nothing they want more than to matter to their parents. And one of the problems is when we feel like we don't matter to our parents, we won't stop loving ourselves. We won't stop loving them. We'll stop loving ourselves. And when that happens, and this is, I deal with a lot of people that have act out with addictions or act in with depression, anxiety. When we do that, we become fragmented. What does fragmented mean? It means we develop masks. This is what I talk about in my book, The Problem Is Me. We show the world one part of ourselves, a mask, that we think will be accepted. But there's an inner pain we have that we dare not allow others to see how we feel. It's kind of like, I say this in my book, it's kind of like we're screaming for help, please help me heal, but don't you dare, an inner voice saying, don't you dare get close to me, because I don't want you to see this part of me. And that fragmentation we will carry into our adult life. And what I do in my groups is I try to help my clients become congruent, be oneself. You say what you mean what you say, to get away from the fragmentation that is really hidden your true self, believing that you're fat or you're ugly or whatever it is that you never want the world to see. And you stay isolated, you stay hurt, and isolation could become a very comfortable place to be. But it also could be it also is very toxic.
Yes. And I can laugh now. The irony of it is, Thomas, I never thought, because of how self-conscious I am, of how I look, I never thought I would be on social media. So when I went in my car to do videos about breaking the myths of Alzheimer's and talk about caregiving, way before anyone else went in their car to do it, I did this like 8 years ago. People said, "Oh, Betsy, you're brave, and you're saying things that I would say," and I'm like, "No, I'm not brave. You don't even know what it took for me to put myself out there, and people looking at me. I know they're looking at me as they're viewing my video." And I said I was just mad at the healthcare system, and I had to use my anger in a positive way. So it became a passion to advocate and to reach out to people, and which led me to where I am today. And Thomas, to be honest with you, I'm very honest with my audience, my guests. I still struggle with, am I good enough? Am I good enough to talk to this guest or that guest? And, what does the audience think or the guests think? I mean, it's a struggle still. But you know what? As the saying goes, I face my fears and do it anyway. As long as it's not dangerous.
That's how powerful the core beliefs are. They're ingrained in us, and they last a lifetime. And we have to sometimes get positive messages from others. This is what I have in my groups. They're all on group text with each other. And sometimes when they can't hear anything positive within themselves, they need to solicit the help of the group in order to feel better about themselves. I'm a fellowship guy. I'm a recovering addict. For me, my egocentricity was when my father was out drinking and gambling all the time. At a young age, at 8, 9 years old, I never said, "Gee, my father suffers from alcoholism." At 8, 9, I said, "What's the matter with me? Something's got to be wrong with me, or my father wouldn't be doing this. My father wouldn't be saying I'm ugly or fat or whatever." At a young age, egocentricity takes over. We don't have enough brain development to understand that it's our parents' issue, not ours. And this is what gets ingrained in us. I remember a story where my son, my youngest son, we were watching a baseball game. And he said, "Dad, how come the kids in the stand root so hard for their favorite baseball player?" And I said, "Well, that baseball player is the heroes." And he was about 8, 9, and he was thinking about what I said. He said, "Dad, they may be my first hero, I mean, they may be my hero someday, but you're always going to be my first hero. We are our children's first heroes, whether we want that responsibility or not. That's just the way it is. And when our hero lets us down, it has profound effects on us throughout our life.
That's very true. If you try to get your parents' approval, well, I stopped. I knew I was never going to get it. And so when they finally did,
that was later on in life, but early on,
later on,
we want that more than anything.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And I was shocked when my father or my mother would tell me that they were proud of me. I really was. Yep. And to this day, Thomas, when I get a compliment from someone, I cry. It touches me deeply, not in a bad way, in a good way. It touches me to know that I helped someone, and that's very powerful. Getting positive feedback is so powerful. And people think, like you're a keynote speaker. I do my show, and people think, they don't need any encouragement. Yes, we do. I'll say it for myself. Yeah, we do.
Absolutely.
Every once in a while. It just lets us know that, to make a difference is very touching to hear. Your second book, I like how you come up with the title. Don't put crap in your kid's diaper. The cleanup cost can last a lifetime. True.
It's called don't put your crap in your kid's diaper. So there's a your in there.
Oh, I bet.
That's
don't put crap in your kid's diaper. Did I say that wrong? Okay.
No, that's okay. Okay, but I mean, it's hard. Our kids are born. Yeah, our kids are born, and we want the best for them. But sometimes we put our fears in their diaper. We put our resentments for others in their diaper. We put a lot of other things in their diaper that really they don't need. And that's part of what I talk about, that each parent should, and I go through all the different stages, but each parent should really get help for themselves. Monitor their inner critic. Talk about the things that they need to work on in order to give their children the best messages that they can give their children. We all love our children, but I've had clients that they rush in and always fix their children's messes, and they don't let their children develop healthy coping mechanisms where they learn how to get out of their own messes. And then these kids get to a certain age, and they don't know how to deal with life. And they go back, and they're frustrated, they're angry, they act in with depressions, act out with addictions, because they have never learned coping mechanisms. Now, don't get me wrong, when your kids are in impending danger, we always have to take care of our children. But when our children get into little messes in their life, talk to them early on. What do they think they should do? Let them develop coping mechanisms. Because if a child grows up without coping mechanisms, they're not going to be able to handle the world. And that's what I tell some parents. And many times a parent will come to me and say, I don't understand it. Jamie or Susan is so mad at me, and I was always there taking care of all their problems. Well, that's why they're mad at you, because they don't know how to deal with their own problems when they get old enough.
Yeah, that I can definitely see that. When I came to my mom, I was being bullied in 7th grade, and she was, just smile, or it's your imagination. You're just imagining that. No, I wasn't imagining it. It was real. And I just, didn't get any support. And I say it on the show that when you cut off communication with your children, they can't come to you. They're going to go to other sources. And they may not be sources that you want them to go to.
No. You never want your children to solicit. You never want your children to solicit the wrong people, and it's one of the things I told about in my book, and that is to create a safe place for your child. so they could talk to you about their feelings. If you always have to be right, if you don't validate their feelings, a child that feels like their feelings are not validated will feel like they're not validated. And eventually they're going to have to get that void filled, and you don't want them to go to the wrong people. I could hear my children's feelings. I don't have to agree with it, but I can hear it. I can validate it. I hear you. I hear how you feel. Because a child needs to know that their feelings are important. Now, I'm not telling anybody out there to be their child's best friend because that's what people think. No, you give your child consequences, but consequences are the actions they take. If they don't clean their room, they can't play with their toys the next day. If they don't come home at a certain time, they can't go out the next day. Children need boundaries. Boundaries is love. Boundaries teaches them that there's things they can and can't do in their life. It's very important. But at the same time, we really have to make sure that we're validating their feelings. It's very important.
Absolutely. And I definitely make sure that with my son and talking about his feelings, and I mean, this could be a whole nother show, but when my son Josh, who has a cognitive disability, he was great with his dad. He was great being the caregiver with his father, and he understood. And they had a very strong connection. And when my husband died, I let Josh grieve. I let him tell me, even during caregiving, how he felt.
Right.
And Thomas, you would not believe the amount of people that say, I'm sure you do because you're in this field, oh, be strong. Be strong for your mom, or be strong for Josh. I'm like, no, don't tell us to be strong. We've been strong. That's not helpful to say that to someone. And you know, I mean, we're human beings. And I think that children, and especially facing an illness of a parent, they need to be able to vent how they feel. Hey, this sucks.
Well,
I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you something very important that I have learned, and my son taught me this. And it came at a Little League game where he was the best pitcher on his team. Unfortunately, that day he did not have his the plate. He walked people and he lost the game, and he struggled. He was really in a bad place. And I remember walking over to him and in the dugout with his friends, and I was thinking, like, what can I say to him? Should I put on my therapist hat and ask him how he's feeling? Should I put on my pitching coach hat and tell him, let me help you with the delivery? And when I got to the dugout, the amazing thing happened was he looked at me with his friends all over there, and he said, Dad, I want a hug. That's all he wanted was a hug. Not a pitching coach, not a therapist. He wanted a hug. And that's what I tell parents. When you see your child suffering, stop and pause for a minute. Think about what you would have wanted as a child at that age if you were suffering the same way. Whether somebody passed on, whether you just blew the game in a pitching game, whether you had your heart broken or you failed a test. Think about what you would have wanted your parents to say. Let that compassion guide what you say and the way you say it. And I think I tell this to parents in my book. Don't put your crap in your kid's diaper. Pause for a minute. Don't jump in. See, the problem we have, and I have it too, I understand, when we see our children in pain, we want to take the pain away right away. We want to relieve them of the pain. Well, guess what? Life is walking through the pain, not escaping it. So when we do see our children in pain, just pause and say, if that happened to me as a kid, what would I want from my parents? Let that compassion guide what you say and the way you say it. And that's another thing that I say in my book that I think is very important for parents to understand.
That is important. That's so sweet that your son just wanted a hug. He just wanted that reassurance, you know. Oh, maybe I didn't do as well as I thought, but you still love me.
Yeah,
you know.
And you know what? There's plenty of time for me to go over his pitching delivery, and go over all the other things that I thought he needed at that time. But as I go back to what I said originally, and we are our children's hero, he wanted a hug. That's what he wanted. That's all he wanted at that particular time.
I love that. And sometimes, I think that's all people want is a hug.
Absolutely.
When I was talking about grieving 5 years ago, people didn't want to hear it. Now people are saying the same things that I'm saying. It's like some people just want someone to listen to, and your child may just want you to listen to them and give them a hug. They don't want you to fix it. Some things can't be fixed. Death of a loved one can't be fixed.
Exactly.
But to deal with the problems is so very important. There's a lot, and it's going to be coming now, with children, young adults being caregivers as people age, and having to deal with that. And I've talked to children. They were children, and then, they became adults, and they were caregiving, and a lot of them felt like they had no one to talk to. They were stressed.
Well, that's
back when therapy wasn't big.
And I talk to people that have children that have depression and have anxiety, and I tell them, look, sometimes you have to just say, what do you need from me? How could I help you? There's no fixing. There's no telling them what they need to do. When somebody is that hurt inside and absolutely paralyzed, you're telling them to do things they can't do. So the best thing to do is just to meet them where they're at. How can I help you? What can I do for you? Is there anything I could do for you? Because if you're asking them to do something that they can't do, not knowingly, you're pushing them away. I know you don't mean that, but that's really what happens when you're asking somebody to do something that they're not capable of doing. And that's what's really important when it comes to dealing with people that have depression and anxiety. We all want to fix people. That's our nature. But sometimes we got to relinquish that need to fix them and meet them for where they're at. That's the best thing we could do for them at that point.
Yes, and I like your opinion, Thomas. When a child goes to a parent and says, Mom, Dad, I'm depressed, I'm sad, like I did many years ago, and being told, oh, you have nothing to be sad or depressed about, it doesn't help the child. I think parents need to acknowledge that.
Yeah, basically the message is, you're stupid. Something's wrong with you. How dare you complain about that? The problem is you. Instead of being empathetic and saying, I'm sorry that you're hurting. How can I help you? What can I do to help you? To acknowledge their pain. Instead of telling them, basically, like you were told, that something must be wrong with you. How could you be hurt? And that's not a positive message to give to children that are suffering. I'll deal with somebody that has dysmorphia. And they'll look in the mirror, and they'll look at themselves, and they'll say either they're fat or they're ugly or whatever. Now, if you go to that person and say to them, that's ridiculous, you're pretty, you're not fat, you're telling them that they can't see reality, that something's wrong with them again. Instead of doing that, to say, I hear you, how can I help you? What can I do to help you? See, people always try to fix. And I did the same thing. I'm not judging anybody. But we can't fix something that we have no control over or power over or can cure. The best thing to do is to meet the people where they're at and just, again, ask them, how can I help you? What can I do to help you? That's the best thing you could tell somebody. Now, when you have their confidence that they feel you really hear them, they're so much more prone to take direction or help when they believe that you understand them, that you feel them.
Yes, that is so very important. I can tell you in the caregiving world that I've been part of, and I still am a caregiver, is caregivers just want someone to listen to them, not necessarily fix, the situation because it can't be fixed, but just to listen without judgment. And that, just holding space for someone to say, I'm here for you. I have a shoulder you want to cry on, lean on, a hug. How can I support you? Instead of, running in the other direction or telling them, snap out of it. If it was so easy to snap out of depression, people would be doing that. Some people need professional help. And some people might need medication. Yes. Right.
and that's exactly, as I said, I'm a recovering addict, and I realize how important fellowship is. Sometimes we can't do for ourselves what others can do for us, and to have a support group. And that's what I key on my groups. And for my groups, a lot of the wives of the men's groups, three I facilitate, came to me and said, "What did you do with my husband? He's a different person. He's just so much more empathetic and stuff." Then I got into couples consultations. And then from couples consultations, I got into childhood. I want to bring in my childhood, depressed. So God has brought me in a lot of different ways, Betsy, that I never thought. I started to do this, really. I got away from the world of business, and I really wanted to help others with stuff that as I had from tough childhoods, and I wanted to help people give their children the healthy and positive messages, kind of that I didn't get as a child. And then God kind of brought me all this way and stuff, and that's when I started to speak. I was on Dr. Oz. I did a lot of speaking engagements until COVID kind of put a kibosh on everything, but that's okay. That's the way it is. Yep.
What I found, Thomas, and I've spoken to many people over these few years of doing my show, and that is whether they were caregivers or they came from a difficult childhood, they found a way to be victorious, and they want to help other people, and they want to support people, which they didn't have that when they needed it. And they come up with a business or they invent something. I just find that people who have experienced something such as, caregiving or your recovering addict, they understand. It's not book knowledge, just book knowledge. It's, it's walking through that life, and that makes you more understanding.
What you said a mouthful, Betsy, because I have my master's degree in social work. I have a CMAT certificate in drugs and alcohol. And I'm not telling you in all those areas that I didn't learn a lot. I learned from Erickson when I went from a master's degree in social work. I learned a lot. But there's nothing that helped me more help people than overcoming my own experiences. When I do my podcast, and anybody can listen to my podcast on Spotify or iTunes if they put in "The Problem Is Me" in the search bar. When I do my podcast, I get loads of emails saying, "Tom, you're talking about me. You're talking about my husband. Oh my God, I can't believe you know how much you've helped me with your podcast," because that is not what I talk about from school learning. That's overcoming my own experiences. There's nothing I could read in school that could help me understand the true pain of a recovering addict, the true grieving process when they're trying to get sober. There's nothing that can help me more, nothing that's helped them more than overcoming my own experiences and understand exactly how they feel. And I can't read that in books, and I can't read that in certificates. That's something that I know myself. And that's why my podcasts have been very popular. That's why I have clients in my groups from Canada, Israel, California, Florida, all over the place, because they feel like I understand how they really feel. And that's the key in anything we do with clients. When we get them that they could stop and say, wow, this guy, this woman really understands how I feel, then they trust you enough that if you give them direction, they're willing to take it.
That's very true. That is so true. I've even had people say, "Oh, Betsy, you know what? Before I became a caregiver, I didn't really understand what my clients were going through. Now that went through it, I'm more understanding of what they were facing, and now they're better at their job because they are more understanding. And
Absolutely.
said you're a recovering addict. So I want to ask you this, Thomas, because I know this has been said so many times. When we don't validate our feelings, our hurt feelings, we do try to numb them, whether it's alcohol, drugs, sex, compulsive shopping, instead of facing our feelings. And it's hard to face our feelings and how we feel. And
especially if you grew up, Betsy, in a childhood where your parents didn't know how to face their own feelings. We don't know how to regulate a discomfort. We don't know how to regulate a discomfort. We don't have to deal with conflict, so we run. Fight or flight. We either run away or we get angry when anybody gets close to our inner feelings. And that's the problem, is we never learned. It's not our fault. We didn't have a version of intimacy from our parents that taught us that. We had parents that either ran away, got angry, withdrew, shut down. So it's hard to learn how to do that. I teach my clients, instead of running from your feelings, regulate them. As a recovering addict, every feeling I had, I always thought a horrible ending was going to come to the story. I awfulized everything in my life, that something bad was going to happen. That's not true, but that's what I learned, and that's how I acted from what I learned. So we have to learn to regulate those feelings and understand that feelings are not bad. But when you come from a tough childhood, you don't want to feel. When you feel, you want to run away, shut down, act out, whatever it is, food, sex, drinking, drugs, whatever it is. Or you act in with depression and isolation. And really, it's not our fault. Now, we're not responsible for the childhood that we had. But I believe we're responsible for healing that, or we're going to pay the bill. We're not going to have a happy life.
It's true. That, Thomas, you said golden nuggets right there. We have to want to confront our demons, whatever you want to call them, and improve ourselves. I mean, someone could go to therapy, but they have to do the work. The therapist isn't going to do the work for you. You have to do the work. And go ahead.
There's two kinds of willingness I find with my clients. One is the willingness to get help. That's going to places that can help you. It could be 12 steps, a therapist. It could be a priest, a rabbi, a bishop. But then the second one is much harder, Betsy. That's the willingness to take direction. That's the willingness to take the steps that you may not feel like taking. You may not trust they're going to work. That's really the piece that will get, in my opinion, that gets my clients to really heal and get better. I have clients that come to me. They're like unhappy, whatever, but they're not willing to take direction. They want to keep doing what they always did, and they're always going to get what they always got. So that's part of the problem, is the two willingnesses. To get help, that's the first piece, but then the second piece is, are you willing to take direction? That's the tough one.
That's very true. I took a self-help course a few years ago, and it really helped me tremendously. And that started on my road to self-improvement. And, is it easy to change patterns? No, it's not, but it's worth it to improve yourself. And when we were growing up, Thomas, mental health wasn't addressed. It wasn't talked about. People did not go to see, a social worker or a counselor or psychologist. And if they did, it was, hushed. And it takes a lot of courage on someone's part to seek support and help, especially if you are going to be made fun of because of it.
That's
difficult.
society's messages. That's society's messages. When I was on Sirius Radio, I was on with Jenny McCarthy and all of these celebrities, and they had it all backwards. They thought you were a wimp if you were, especially a guy, if you seek help.
Yep.
And I used to tell them, you got that backwards. It takes courage to go to somebody and work on yourself. You got that all backwards. I remember I was on this show with one of the guys that did this. I forget his name. He used to do on his one of the channels on cable. Used to renovate homes. I don't remember who he was. And after I was on Sirius Radio with him, I think it was with Jenny McCarthy, with Wake Up with Taylor, John Fugelsang, whatever it was. He came to me afterwards and he said, I never thought about that. I had this backwards. I thought you were a wimp if you got help. The reality was, it takes courage to get help. I said, now you got it right. So this is the problem with a lot of our society. We got this backwards. When people, my clients bring their children to me, I help their children. But many people are afraid if I bring my children to get help, they're going to be telling them what a bad parent I am. Well, at the end of the day, give your children the courage. Show them that you're willing to work on yourself. It's the best message you give your kids.
Yes. Excuse me. I agree 100%. And I feel, Thomas, that in society needs to change their way of thinking. I've been a mental health advocate for many, many years. I talked about mental health long before I even had the show. And I think that COVID brought mental health to the forefront more, made it more acceptable than it was to get support. And it should have always been acceptable, and it should not be frowned upon. And I think especially with boys growing up to be men, I think we need to give our boys, our sons, the space to be able to show their feelings in a constructive environment, instead of saying, oh, stop crying, man up, suck it up. Back in my time. The
problem is if you have dads and fathers, like my father, who when I showed feelings, my father used to call me his little girl. Whenever I showed feeling, he said, come on, little girl. That message, and still to this day, as you said, you still have childhood messages. I still have an issue crying and feeling my feelings till to this day, because I feel that there's something deep inside of me that says I have to be defective if I show those feelings or if I cry. And again, that message is very powerful in me, and it's because my dad used to call me his little girl if I should feel emotions. So, we have to stop this messaging. We have to, and you know what's amazing? When my clients, when the guys show their wife intimacy, vulnerability, whatever, their wives love it. They're like, oh, give me more of that. But the guys are the ones that are saying, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. This is the ingrained core beliefs that many men suffer.
Yeah, I think, especially in my time, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. My dad was a World War II vet. So you didn't. My father saw crying as a weakness, and even in school, Thomas, if you cried, you were made fun of. Crybaby, it was seen as a weakness. Even girls were made to feel ashamed for crying. So I was always a sensitive soul, and I was, put down for being a crybaby. And so for me to show my feelings, it's really difficult. But then, you know what? As I began to accept myself, and even on some shows that are highly emotional for me, depending on the topic matter, I don't apologize, Thomas, if I cry on my podcast. If it's such an emotional subject for me, I don't apologize for who I am anymore.
No, but you've challenged that. You've challenged it and found out that message you received was a dysfunctional message, and you challenged it. And many people don't do that, and that's what I always key on. What messages did you receive in your childhood that need to be challenged? How is that becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy? And that's what's very important, to challenge some of the messages. But you see, one of the problems that I find with clients is they don't want to look at their parents through a bad light. They just don't want to do that. And the problem with that is if I don't look at what messages I need to challenge, I can't heal it. If I don't have the awareness to know what actions to take, I won't take the actions. And that's what I talk about in my book, too. These 3 keys: self-awareness, action, and maintenance. Without self-awareness, I don't know what actions to take. And without action, there's nothing to maintain. If we're going to heal, we need healthy habits until we feel like they work, like it's part of who we are today. But healthy habits will not come right away. You have to take those actions first until they become healthy habits. And before you take those actions, you got to have self-awareness. You got to be able to say, I know my mom and dad love me, but when they told me this, it wasn't healthy. If I don't have that self-awareness, I'm never going to choose healthy actions.
That is very, very true, Thomas. That is golden nugget right there that you said. And I'll tell you what, from a personal point of view, it's not easy. It's hard. It's really hard to say, this is how I was treated, and to overcome that. Now, I'll give you an example. I was the scapegoat in my family. I was blamed for everything. So I still sometimes think, that's my fault, or that's my fault, and that's why I always tend to want to fix people and fix things. It was so ingrained in my family, Thomas, that I was the scapegoat, that when I found out diagnosis about my son, my younger brother called me up and had the nerve to say to me, "What did you do wrong?"
Exactly.
Can you, so why somebody would even say that to someone is beyond my comprehension. But
because your younger brother was broken himself.
Yes. Yeah, he was a golden child.
Yeah, and in his way, he was broken himself. And even golden childs, we think that the golden child was the luckier one, but at the end of the day, many golden children also suffer consequences because the world doesn't treat them like golden children. And when they get out in the world and they're not the center of everybody's life, they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, that's true. I've been learning about, golden children and the difficulties that they face. And it's amazing. I love talking about mental health and how we can improve on ourselves, and validation. When people keep suppressing their feelings, it's not good, and it's been proven it's not good for your health at all.
You're acting in with you'll act in with depression and anxiety. You'll act them out with addictions if you're not able to share your feelings. And again, I teach my clients uncomfortable conversations, if they're done in a healthy way, will bring closeness to those around you and will heal your inner wounds. But they're uncomfortable. Got to remember that. You may not want to do them. I teach my clients how to have those uncomfortable conversations, how to be empathetic, how to start the conversation right, how to put boundaries down. All of these little trinkets are the way we can have conversations, get out our feelings, and hear the other person's feelings. But you're right. It's very difficult for those that aren't used to it.
That's true. And especially our generation is not used to it. Even, the generation of my parents, you did not talk about it. You didn't talk about anything. I wasn't even allowed to ask questions about a deceased relative. You didn't talk about the deceased.
Yep.
Or, or how you felt. And it's sad. Like, my brother died in 2021, and when I would ask my mom, how she was doing and about, sadistic grief counseling, she bit my head off. And Thomas, she said to me, "It's no one's business how I feel. I keep it to myself." And I was thinking,
right.
Okay, but how sad that you won't. I was thinking to myself, how sad that you won't go for help, that you think that's airing your dirty laundry. But that's how we grew up.
Exactly. Oh, many people grew up with not airing their dirty laundry because they felt like they wouldn't be judged. And that's what codependency is, giving other people power to dictate how you feel about yourself. Absolutely.
Well, Thomas, you're such a gem to talk to. How can people contact you, join one of your groups, get coaching or counseling through by you?
So if you want to listen to my podcast again on Spotify or iTunes, you could put in The Problem Was Me on the search. And if you want to join one of I do have a couple of openings for men. You could contact me on my email, which is Thomas Gagliano, GAGLIANO, NJ, after that, New Jersey, NJ@gmail.com. And my website is theproblemwasme.com. And I have some interesting interviews on there with Sirius Radio, with different videos. So feel free, browse, and have fun.
I highly recommend everyone to go on Thomas's website and to listen to your podcast and your videos, because you give out some great advice, and I enjoyed listening to you. And where can people purchase your books? I know they're on Amazon.
They could go to Amazon and purchase The Problem Was Me. That's my best-selling book on Amazon. And they could also purchase Don't Put Your Crap in Your Kid's Diaper on Amazon as well. Yes, and I hope you enjoy. And please, if you do purchase my books, you have any comments, good or bad, I'd love to hear them. Send them to my email. I'm always looking to fine-tune my skills, so that would be great.
Well, thank you for being a guest, Thomas. Folks, you heard Thomas Gagliano. I'm going to spell his last name, Gagliano. And just thank you. I love having mental health people on talking about mental health. Nothing to be ashamed of, folks. And all the information about Thomas Gagliano will be in the blog that Jeannie White writes. Station manager, produces the show. And I want to thank you all for listening and subscribing. If you don't already, Chatting with Betsy is for free on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Music, Apple, to name a few. And I want to help as many people as possible. I have experts on. Thomas Gagliano is a great, excellent resource. Get to know him. Listen to him. I was inspired. Actually, I think one of your videos, I forgot which one it was, Thomas, because it was last year. I listened to it. I was yelling here. Yeah, that's right, Thomas. And I enjoyed listening to you. And I always want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing. And please share this podcast to help other people. I want to help other people. That's what I'm here for. It's what Thomas is here for. And you can help by sharing this podcast and letting other people know about it, because I think nowadays everyone is struggling with something, and people need support, and they're looking for support. They're looking for support systems. So let's share our knowledge of resources, and that will that helps people. And I forgot to say the disclaimer in the beginning, so I'll say it now. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. And as I always say at the end of my show, you could follow me on Facebook, Betsy E. Wurzel, Wurzel. I have a support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, on Facebook for caregivers. And as I always end my show with, in a world that you could be anything, shine your light, be kind, and we need it now more than ever. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Bachelor World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Chat with you soon. Bye-bye now.